And so I opened up my door, got in the car, but by then it was too late. He was in the back seat. There was someone following us back to our car. And he got in the back seat and put a knife to my throat and told her to drive. My name is Ruth Carroll. I am originally from Atlantic City, New Jersey. That's where I was born, and moved to Pleasantville after that, but generally from the Atlantic County area in New Jersey.
Let's start at the beginning. Can you describe what your childhood home was like growing up?
Some of the earliest memories, we had a good time. We lived in this little red house, and we had a big backyard with a pool and dogs and, all the fun stuff that kids do. And my brother and I, we were just a year apart, so we were kind of really close. And I did have a little sister. Well, I still have a little sister. She's 6.5 years younger than me, but she didn't get to experience a lot of what I did because she was little. But we had normal stuff, Christmases where my mom went crazy and put 50 million things under the tree, and all the fun things that you do during holidays and birthdays and things like that. And up until I was about 6 years old, everything was peaceful and normal.
Did you have both parents growing up?
In the beginning, I did, yes. Had my mom and my dad up until about 6 years old. And then things changed a lot at that point in time. The care that she was giving us was gone. She kind of just left us under the care of my grandparents. And at first it was fun because my granddad, he loved the beach. So he would take me to the beach and we would collect sand because he made these beautiful sand castles, not like on the beach kind of sand castles. He would carve them and shape them in his workshop. And they were massively big. And he put lights in them and all kinds of fun things. So I would watch him do that. But then something happened with him, and he started visiting me in my room at night. And at this point, I was 7. And I was afraid, and I told my mother, and she didn't seem to believe me. She said, "Oh, it's just because your dad's not around. Stop making up stories." So I was quiet and I let it be. And so I avoided my grandfather as much as I could at that point in time. I hated bedtimes because he would come in to say goodnight, and I would just pretend I was asleep so that I didn't have to touch anything. And he eventually stopped, but then my grandmom, I learned a lot about her during this time. I had broken my arm outside playing with my brother, and my grandmother, when I got back from the hospital, decided that the cast wasn't put on correctly. So she took it off and tried to reset my arm and put it back on. And I told my mom, and again, she didn't believe me. And eventually, when I didn't stop crying, she took me back to the doctors and they fixed it. But at that point in time, I realized my mom wasn't for me anymore. She had other interests.
What about your dad? What kind of relationship did you have with him?
I had a great relationship with my dad. And when the divorce came, she just kind of kept us away from him. I thought it was his fault until I got older and I realized that my mom took us away from him and we moved like a lot. So, and she would never like keep in touch with him as to where we were. But up until that time of the divorce, until later on in my life, when we reconnected, I had a great relationship with him. There was never any bad times there.
Did your siblings get treated the same way you were treated, or were there differences?
My little sister, she was a baby, so she, of course, was fine. My brother, he didn't experience as much as me, but he did, like my grandmother used to force us to take medications that weren't ours. She was just, I found out later that she was in and out of Ancora, which is a psychiatric hospital that's down the road a little bit in New Jersey. So that explained a whole lot, but she would force us to take pills and things like that. And we learned to just hide them under our tongues and then just spit them out. But so he got that kind of treatment, but he didn't get hurt, so he didn't experience the medical part that she would try and take care of me. And then I do remember a time when my cousins would come over frequently because they lived not too far down the street in Brigantine. And she would make us all bathe together in a bathtub, which we were all little, but there were 5 of us, and she would stick us all in the tub with scorching hot water and make us sit in it, even though we were screaming. So he got to experience some of that. So I guess equally, but not my sister.
Your parents had gone through a divorce, and how old were you, and what do you remember about that time?
I remember a lot. And when we finally got out of my grandparents' house, I was 7. And my mom got an apartment and moved the 3 of us, my sister, my brother, and me, into an apartment. And I thought, okay, good. So maybe I'll get my mom back, and we'll be normal again, and she'll be hanging out and having fun. And for a little while, it was okay. Like she liked animals like I do, and she would let cats come in the window, and she would feed them in the kitchen and things like that. But it was fun. There was a lot of fleas though in there. She couldn't afford much, so it was kind of like an icky place.
What was it like being separated from your father after the divorce?
I missed my dad. Me and him were close, and he was there. He always listened. My mom always seemed to kind of be aloof at times, but he always listened and was there. And I missed that, having someone to confide in, because I didn't have that now. I was afraid to tell my brother about the things that happened to me at my grandparents' house. He experienced some of them, but I didn't tell him the other stuff. So I just kind of shut down. But I miss my dad, because I probably could have told him these things, and he probably could have corrected some of them.
How did you feel about being sent to live with your grandparents?
I was excited at first because it was near the beach, and I figured, I liked the beach, and I would get to see my cousins all the time. And so I was excited at first until these things, the things started happening with my grandparents that made me feel uncomfortable. After that, I was just like, I don't want to be here anymore. Just wanted to be somewhere without them.
How long were you with your grandparents or your grandmother, and how would you describe your relationship with her?
We were there for 3 months during the summertime. We ended up our school year in Pleasantville, and then we went to Brigantine for the summer. And then we moved back to Pleasantville to start the school year. So it was just 1 summer. And I don't remember much of what my relationship was with her when I was young, except for those times. As I got older, I did make amends with her, because I realized that she mentally was unstable and didn't mean anything by what happened. It was just, so I did make amends. But up until that point there, I didn't remember much about them. I don't think we saw them much. So moving into their house was kind of awkward, because I didn't really know them. I met them, saw them, talked to them, but never spent a lot of time with them.
Are you able to share? Are you comfortable sharing some of the things that happened with your grandmother?
They were awkward. And like when she would bathe all of us together, it was just weird, because we're boys and girls, but we were 7 and 8 and 9. But she had this desire to nurture and take care of us, but she did it in really odd ways, like scorching hot water instead of normal water. And I'd asked what the pills were that she would give us, and she said, these are just to keep you from getting sick like me. So it'll stop you from getting sick, so just take them. To this day, I still have no idea what they were. I don't know. And she did have an obsession with cleaning. And so me and my brother, to make light of things, it's kind of mean, but we had fun. We took Jell-O and vanilla pudding, and put them together in a bowl, and we would put them on our spoons and flick them up onto the ceiling to watch her clean. It's kind of mean, but those were the things we did to lighten up the situation because it was just uncomfortable being there. And the day that she decided to take the cast off my arm, I was just like, I need to get out of here because it was a raw break. I just broke it. Do you remember the sliding boards that are metal? They're big and they have the poles on the sides.
At the playgrounds?
At the playgrounds, yes. So I was at the top of that, and it was hot because the slides get hot, and I didn't want to go. My brother said, well, just go down the poles, slide down the poles. But the poles were hot. So I went down halfway, and he says, well, just let go. You'll land on your feet. And I'm like, okay. So I let go, and of course I landed on my arm and broke it. And, you know, you listen to your brother because he's your older brother. And so I went home, and within 24 hours, she was obsessed with that break and taking care of it and nurturing it. I think she meant well, now that I know that she was mentally challenged, I guess is the politically correct way to say it. So now I understand, but still at 7, I didn't get why she reset my arm and put it back in the cast and said, go on your merry way. I liked to run, and I remember going to the playground and practicing sprinting because my brother was like, I'm going to race you and I'm going to beat you. And I liked competition, so I did. And we were running on stones, and I fell and cut a big hole in my leg. I went home, and I was just like going to wash it off and take care of it. But I went to hide from her because I knew what she would try to do. But she caught me and she poured straight up alcohol on the raw. Like the cut was like the hole encompassed my whole knee. And so she just opened a bottle of alcohol and poured the whole bottle onto there to kill the germs as I was screaming. So again, to nurture and take care. But that was the only other accident that I had there. And luckily we got to get out of there soon.
Living with your grandmother, also under the same roof, was your grandfather?
Yes.
You mentioned in your notes that at first you felt like your grandfather was a source of comfort.
Yes.
When did things start to change, and if you can share what had happened?
They started to change when I can't tell you what actually clicked him. I don't know. He just one day just decided that since my mom wasn't home, that he would start putting us to bed. And my brother's like, I don't need you to tuck me in. And so he would come into my room and tell me bedtime stories or whatever. And it started out okay. But I was like too old for that. So I was just like, Pop up, I just want to go to sleep. I'm okay with this. And, and he's like, well, you're Snake, you like snakes, right? And I said, yeah, my snake's name was Marty. And he's like, it was a 5-foot garden snake, Western garden snake. And he's like, well, I have another one. And he explained his snake. And he said, do you want to meet it? And I said, yeah, tomorrow when I wake up. And he says, well, I have it now. And that's when he slipped my hand under his shorts and introduced me to his Sneaky Pete, is what he called it. And of course, I took my hand away, but he pursued that for a while until I started. I had bunk beds, so I used to sleep on the bottom one. So then I started sleeping on the top one, and I slept up against the wall. And I would turn my back so he couldn't tell if I was awake or asleep. And so it kind of ended that. I was able to brush that off in the beginning because he didn't really force me like my grandmother. And my grandmother used to yell at him. So I kind of, in some instances, felt sorry for him. But I didn't let me touch him no more. But he just kind of gave up on that. And I just kind of let it go because at that time I had bigger problems. My grandmother was a bigger confrontation than he was.
Were there other adults around, and do you remember if they had any type of reactions to things that were going on? Did others know about it?
No one else knew. They always did it when no one was home because my mom was unfortunately not around much. So it was just the two of them taking care of us. So there was no other adult supervision.
Your grandfather eventually had passed.
He did. He did. That summer before we moved out, he passed away. It affected me, not his death so much. I was kind of relieved. And I feel bad saying that, but at least one of the people that made me uncomfortable was not around. But it was a heart attack. He didn't suffer, so I was glad about that. What happened after that was the part that still mortifies me today, because my grandmother had my father take a picture of him in his coffin and put it on the dresser in my bedroom so that I would remember him. And that mortifies me today because I still see that picture just on the dresser and have no idea why my grandmother wanted that done. Didn't get to see my father. She must have known where he was. I didn't know, but she contacted him and asked, and the picture showed up. Later on in time, I found out it was my dad who took it. And he was like, why? But he did it because she asked. That was it.
Did you ever try to take it down, or did she say, this stays up?
Oh, I hid it from her because I wasn't keeping that on my dresser. And then soon after we moved, and I left it in the dresser. I left all my clothes there. I didn't take anything with me.
So after that, you moved back in with your mother?
We moved in with our mom, and she took us to an apartment in Pleasantville.
How did your mom respond to what had happened to you at your grandparents', or did she even know?
I tried to tell her, like, she did believe me about my arm, because she had to take me back to the doctor's office, and they said, who messed with this? So she had to believe me. But in reference to the stuff I told her about my grandfather, she didn't believe anything I said.
You had talked throughout this conversation about your losing your mom's support at critical moments. How did you process all of that? How did it shape your understanding, specifically for, trusting people or loving people? Do you know what kind of effect it may have had?
It did affect me because I had no idea at that point as to what love was. And at that point, like, my mom didn't hug me much anymore. Eventually she started to do that again, but like all the comforting things that mothers do, the nurturing was gone. And that affected me because then I felt like, how do you gain someone's love? How do I gain her trust? How do I get her to believe me? And as a little kid, I didn't know how to process that because I was just too young.
It's strange that even though they can show you who they are time and time and time again, and you can realize that you're never going to get the type of affection that you want from them, as children, we never stop wanting that.
Yes.
It always stays, you always want it no matter how much you're convinced that you may never get it.
And I didn't give up. I still wanted her love, and I still tried, and I still pursued her. And it took her 7 years before she died to listen to me. She died when I was 27. So I didn't have her long in my life, but towards the end of her life, she finally started to listen, and we rebuilt things. But that's getting ahead of things. So I didn't give up pursuing her. I didn't know how at that point because I was too little to process how to get someone to love you. And all I know is I was learning the wrong way, that you get attention by somebody through inappropriate behavior. And that was something that started to mold me. And I was just like, this is all I knew at this point in time. Because all the things that I knew when I was a little kid, they were gone.
So you were acting out now to get attention?
No, I wasn't acting out. I was realizing, though, that the only attention I was getting from people was the negative attention. If I hurt myself, then, then I would get attention. But she hurt me when she was giving it. And my grandfather was giving me attention, but in inappropriate ways as well. So that started to like warp me. Like, is that what love is? Is that what comfort is? Is that kind of behavior? It was teaching me that stuff was the way it is. As odd as it felt inside and wrong, I had no one to counterbalance it with because my mother wasn't around to correct my thought. So I was left to create my own.
You never learned.
No, I didn't learn until I got older and went to counseling. So it's like,
and it's likely that she also hadn't learned as well.
I found as I researched all of this, when I started writing my book 15 years ago, I started the process. And my conclusion is that, because my mom, I found out later on after she had passed, that she was a cutter. And when she was a teenager and into her early adulthood, I've always wondered why she would do that. She would cut herself and make marks all over herself for attention. And so, but looking back at what my grandparents did to me, it just leaves me to believe that she was abused. So it tied it together that eventually, as I got older, that she was acting, she didn't know any better because no one taught her.
Right. Yep, I've learned that as well.
Unfortunately, right?
Yeah, exactly. So eventually you came back to live with your mom, and what was life like with her at that point?
It was fun because for a little glimpse of a quick minute, she was back to my old mom, not the mom that was absent, but the one that, was there when we were little and, brought animals in so we could pet them. And, she didn't have much. We didn't have anything to really live with or call our own. The apartment was ours, but didn't have a whole lot. So she liked to explore. So she would actually go out and hang out with us. And we were on the bay. So we would go and look for lizards and snakes and all that fun stuff. And so for a little while, it was nice, even though the apartment had fleas, like the infestation of fleas there was disgusting. But it was ours. And I had my mom for a short time. The apartment complex was infested with cats, the same cats that she would let into our house. So they came in and left fleas. So, but we didn't care because we finally had pets. Because we lost our dog when we moved in with our grandmother, she wouldn't let us have him. So we were excited to have animals again. We didn't care that we were scratching 24/7. So it was just nice to feel safe and happy and excited once again.
How soon after did your mother introduce somebody new into your life?
Remembering back that far, I can't get exactly, but it wasn't long, maybe 6 months before she brought somebody new around. And at that point, for that one little bit that my grandmother saw my father to take that picture, I hadn't seen my dad. So when she introduced us to him, the new guy, I knew that my father wasn't coming back.
Was this the first guy aside from your dad that you had seen her with?
That I know of. I mean, I found out over the years that I'm sure there were others, unfortunately.
You got to know him. I mean, you were, I guess, living under the same roof. What had transpired?
At first, I was excited because I hadn't seen my father, and maybe he could be a father figure, not replace my dad, but, maybe our family would be complete again.
And you were how old at this time?
I was 8. And he was fun. He laughed a lot, and just he made us smile. He seemed to really enjoy playing with my little sister. And at that point, she was 2.5, and my brother was 9. So we were older and she was younger, but it seemed like just maybe this might be okay. My mom smiled a lot when he was around, so it was good to see her happy. So, but then he started looking at me differently than he looked at my brother and my sister. And I noticed that soon after he moved in with us. I could tell something was weird. I couldn't pinpoint it. But he looked at me, he would like linger looking at me like, well, if you saw like a pretty woman and you look at them, that's how he would look at me.
Like a hard stare, almost like creepy like.
Like a creepy stalker kind of a stare. I can explain it that way now, but then I didn't know what it was. But it just made me totally uncomfortable because why is he looking at me like this? Where did the fun go? Where did the happiness go? So that's when I started to feel weird because of what he started doing that way. And I told my mom about that, and she just was like, "You're just exaggerating."
Every time.
Every time. That went on through my whole life with her up until, like I said, when she got cancer, she turned around. But it took all of them years for her to trust me and believe what I said.
Did you change at that point or, being around him?
I didn't know what to do. So me and my brother were still close, but he started having his own friends. So, but we still hung out together a lot. So I just kind of would follow his friends, became a tomboy, just stayed outside to avoid. At that point, he became my stepfather that fast. My mother said, "Oh, by the way, we're married." And I was like, when did that happen? So now he's my stepfather. So there is no escape. This is it. I had to figure out a way to be happy. As time went on, of course, girls' bodies mature and change. And he would approach me and try to touch me inappropriately at first. And remember what my grandfather had done, and I was like totally grossed out by it. I would push him away and just hide. And I was able to get away for a while, but then he changed and became more, I don't want to use the word evil, but I don't know how to explain it, because around my mom, he was fine. But when no one else was around, he would flick into something else and the other side would come out. And he started telling me that if I didn't do certain things for him, that he would hurt me. And I didn't believe him. I ran away from him, not from home, just ran away and went outside. And he would approach over and over again to eventually, to the point where he pinned me down and just did what he wanted to do and told me that if I said anything to anybody, that he would kill them. So being young, I believed him and I just clammed up at that point.
He threatened you in that way too?
He did. Yeah, he threatened me that if I told my mom, that he would kill her. If I told my brother, he would hurt my brother. And that continued, that lifestyle continued for a long time, and I didn't know how to get out of it. And then we started moving a lot because his job, he was with the harness racing horses. I didn't put that in my notes, but he rode on the carts, and he raced horses. So we moved every 6 months to another state. Wherever the horses were racing, we would go to Florida, New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and just constantly moved. So he used that to his advantage. And because there was a lot of times that I was alone with him and I had no one to talk to. So he just kind of boxed me in, and it's just like, this is it. You want to do things in your life, you have to do this. Otherwise, you can't do that. So I had to begin to trade his favors for going outside. As we moved, every 6 months we would move. My mom would lose all of our belongings. We would fly. If we flew from Florida to New York, she'd have to pack up whatever she could pack into the plane and then have everything delivered back to our wherever we go, our new house. But nothing ever showed up. So every 6-8 months, we would lose all of our personal effects. And so we never made friends. We never had belongings. So we just became each other's friends, and that was it. And I didn't tell my brother any of it because I was afraid to be honest. He was all I had, and I didn't want to ruin my friendship with him or have him think I was crazy or go beat the crap out of my stepfather, because my brother had an anger issue because we weren't seeing our father. He had some problems with that. So he was a very angry person when it came to my stepfather. So I didn't tell him because I didn't want him to get himself hurt as well. When we started moving, I was about 9 and my brother was about 10. And that went on until I was 15. 14 years old is when we stopped moving. So we moved every 6 months.
Did you at some point try to talk to anybody about it?
Well, we didn't have any friends, and we were secluded from my family because we were never home. When we were in New Jersey, we were only in New Jersey for a couple months, and my family's here. So I lost contact with my family for several years. I didn't see anybody. So there was no one to tell, and I didn't know anyone's phone numbers back then because I was a kid and we didn't have cell phones. So telephones were just obsolete to me. I had no idea how to reach out to anybody. So again, all I had was my brother. I didn't make friends with the teachers in school because we weren't there long enough to gain trust. Because as soon as we get started, we were out the door to another school. Like if you put them all together, the experiences, maybe a couple of years out of all of them, not all in a row, but like a couple months here, a couple months there would add up to a few years. Like I tried to have fun with my brother. When we lived in Florida, we would go and steal wood from the construction sites and build forts. And we just stayed outside. And there was a golf course when we lived in Coral Springs. And we would collect the golf balls that would go into the canals. And we would go sell them back to the golfers. And there were alligators on the golf course. And we tormented them and learned how to get away because they chase you. But that was fun. So we did find fun, me and my brother did. And I used that as my avenues to avoid my stepfather. As I got older, I learned a little bit more how to be crafty to avoid him.
What would you say you were most afraid of during that time?
I wanted a connection with a person beside my brother. And I just felt that I would never have that. I didn't mention the church in the beginning, but when I was in that little red house in the beginning, there was a church across the street. And I remember going to Sunday school there and that there was a connection with some people there. I was 5 when I went to that Sunday school, but something there just caught me as a little kid. And I just, that connection stayed with me. And I longed for that when we were moving like all over the Eastern Seaboard. I wanted that connection with something or somebody again, because I wanted to feel safe. I was afraid that I was never going to feel safe again or loved or protected or wanted, because I didn't feel wanted at that point. I felt used. And I just wanted something different than that. I didn't think I would ever have that. But as I got older, I learned how to avoid him, and we stopped moving and we moved to a place called Scullville in southern New Jersey. And that's when I was, I guess, 14. And the sexual behaviors were dwindling because I was becoming very smart at hiding from him. And he never knew where I was to say, well, you can't do that unless you do this, because before he came home from work, I'd split, which meant that I was starting to fail in school because I wasn't attending. Up till then, I was, despite of everything, I was still a straight A student because I liked school. I liked being around people because it felt safe. But at this point, I was just like, I can't study anymore. I can't do the physical homework for high school. So I started cutting and not going. But that enabled me to get away from him so I could hide, so I could protect myself and I didn't have to be his sexual slave anymore. So, but in that, I met the lady across the street, and wonderful woman. She had 2 kids, and I used to babysit for her. And that became another escape. I would go to her house and watch her children, and she would go out. And she'd come back and tell me about all her stories and how much fun she'd had. And I was like, that's so cool. Wish I could go. And she said, you can. And I was like, well, don't you have to be 18 to go to a bar? And she's like, she was a hairdresser. So she was like, I can take care of all that. So she would put makeup, do my hair, and my little sister then became the babysitter, and I went out to bars with her, and that became my new escape, I guess you could say, to get away from everything. I had to say it was fun because I learned that I enjoyed dancing, and not for provocative pleasure, but just to me, it was just like you could be free and be yourself, and nobody's watching, and I didn't have to cover myself up because at that point in time, I covered like all the way up to here and all the way down. Nobody was allowed to see my body at all. I hid myself. But out there, I was able to just be free because nobody knew the life that I lived. So
You were around so many people. Did that help you meet people and find connection?
I didn't meet anybody, but it did. The connection that I found was with me. I was realizing that what I was living in was not what I wanted, and I didn't feel that it was the right thing either. I felt at that point I started to realize there's something missing. This is wrong. All of this is not right. And I just liked being out because I felt free. I didn't make any connections with any people. It just felt good to be myself, to learn who I was and learn what I might like, because at this point I had no idea who I was. There was an incident that happened when we were at the one bar one night. The bar was away from houses. It was kind of in the Bay Area, and the parking lot was small. So, and the band that we were seeing was like really good. And they drew a big crowd. So we had to park way down the street. So it was like 2:00 in the morning, and we're leaving the bar to go to get to the car. And she yells across, she's walking down the street. I'm walking next to her over here. And she's like, you need to move it and get in the car. And I was just like, I was a stupid kid. I was arguing with her. Why? She's like, can you shut up and just get in the car? And so I opened up my door, got in the car, but by then it was too late. He was in the back seat. There was someone following us back to our car. And he got in the back seat and put a knife to my throat and told her to drive. And at that point, I was like, we're going to die. So I was just like, okay. And he's like, give me all your money. So I was like trying to fumble to find, I didn't have any. I said, here's my pocketbook. I don't have money. And I'm going to leave her nameless because she's still present today. But she gave him hers, and that wasn't enough. He said, just drive. And so we drove around for hours while he was just babbling what he was going to do. And he just was like, I don't know if I'm going to just rape you or whether I'm going to, slit your throats and tie you to a tree to be found and, eaten by the wild animals. Don't know what I'm going to do. And then eventually he just stopped and said, stopped the car, and he opened up the door and left that abruptly. So we went to the police station, and he was in the books, so they arrested him. And he got out. Someone had posted his bail. But then in the meantime, before the court hearing, he did it again, and he killed the people that were in that car. And at that point, I was just like, I can't live like this. And I went home and found my mom in her bed with a man who was 30 years older than her. Like, he could have been my great-grandfather. And I was just like, okay. So I ran out and I went next door, not across the street to the lady friend that I go out with, but my next door neighbor, because she had a daughter and I was hoping that she was home. And I walked into their house, and my stepfather was in bed with the mother of my friend next door. So I was just like, I'm done. This is done. I have to run away. And that I felt that was my only way to get out, was to run away.
Where'd you go?
I tried to figure out where to go, and I didn't know where to go. And I wound up, this part wasn't in the notes. I went to a bar, and there was a man there. And this was the first time I made a connection. And that was who I moved in with. 3 weeks later, I moved in with him. And 6 months later, I was married. And at this point in time, I was 17. And my mother had nothing to say. She said, see you, bye. So again, she didn't believe anything I had told her up to this point. The only person I forgot to mention, the only person who did believe me was my high school guidance counselor. I did confide in her finally because I was crying a lot in school, and someone reported me. And I told her what was going on. But back then, unless you have proof each time, you can't do anything. The victims were never, I hate to say it, the system worked against the victim. You had to prove that you were done this to. And I'm like, how do I prove when I'm 12 years old that I was raped every day of my life up until, how do you prove that? I don't know how. I'm a kid. But without having that proof, I could do nothing to my stepfather. So she said, I'm going to help you. So she said, you're going to quit school. We're going to get your GED. I'm going to get you to pass the test, and you're going to get out. And she was in the process of trying to find me a place to go when all that other stuff happened. And I just kind of went to a bar and found someone on my own instead of waiting for her.
What was your life like after you got married?
I found out very quickly that he was a control person, and he abused drugs on a regular basis, and then that he was a physical abuser. So the cycle started over with a different kind of abuse at that point in time.
You thought you had finally broke free from that type of environment?
I don't think I knew what I thought. I just knew that I was away from my stepfather and I wouldn't be raped anymore. But then I realized you get married, you have to have sex with your partner. And that became a real problem because I was like, don't touch me. And it was like, to me, it was dirty. Like, don't touch me.
Did that take a long time to be comfortable with somebody in that way?
That took years. I don't know if that had an effect on our marriage, why he hit. I don't know why he hit. Can only say I mean, no one deserves to be hit, so I don't know if the lack of sex was part of that, but I don't think so. But it took me years to realize that that's a way to show love to somebody that deserves your love, that you don't just do that because they tell you to, that it has to be something that's natural and they deserve it. Otherwise, you don't give it to them. But it took me a long time to realize that.
You only knew that act to be something that people do to each other, but not as a loving act.
I only knew it as an act that I was told to do it, so I had to do it because otherwise, if I didn't do it, I would be punished. So it became, that's why I did it.
That's what you had to unlearn and
Yes.
relearn.
So eventually in the marriage that I put my mind frame to that, okay, you have to do it because he's going to punish you if you don't. Did I like it? No. So, but I did it because I did not want to be punished anymore. So I tried to move on from that aspect.
There must have been a lot of things that you had to relearn, trusting people, confidence, self-worth, growing up as an adult, learning a different way than other people have learned.
Yeah, it was a rough thing because as I got older, like I was abused by him until I was 35. And I literally had to um, break free from a stranglehold. I was dying on the floor. He was killing me, and I was able to get away. But it took years to unhear the evil voices and unhear the punches and the bruises and to have confidence in myself. I didn't have any because I didn't know who I was. At 35, I'm like, who are you? Like I was cut out of school, wasn't able to go. And he controlled me so much in the marriage that I was allowed to go certain places and do certain things, but then I had to come home. And that was it. I had to make a count of every step that I took. If I was 5 minutes late, I got hit. If the cabinets weren't perfect, I mean, like everything had to line up precise. Otherwise, he'd just take it and throw it all onto the floor and tell me to do it again. So I had to undo all of that because then I became a neurotic woman. I would explain to anybody, well, why were you late? I would tell them exactly what happened because I had to account for every step of the way. And I had to undo all of that because people were like, stop explaining yourself. I don't need all the details. And that took about 10 years to undo, to just not account for every step, to not be afraid to be late, to realize that your house doesn't have to be in order. Otherwise, you're going to get hit, and have a big sign put on the wall in the bathroom, do this, this, and this today, the management. That's what he called himself. When I was in my early 20s in the marriage, I longed for that connection that I had at that church. And I remembered where it was and actually found out that they had moved and they were closer to my house. So I started going back and realizing a lot of the dysfunction was not normal and trying to learn to counsel through it and correct some of the bad things. But then as I did that, I found out what was underneath all of this. And I found out that my husband was into satanic worship with his friends. And that opened up my eyes to a whole lot because they would actually worship on the front yard and try to pay me money to not go to church, to stay there with them and worship with them. And they were into a lot of drugs at that time. So they would bring to me their friends that have overdosed and are going down and would force me to pray over them. And if my prayers didn't heal them, and if they didn't come around, that I would get beat. So I would pray over them, and God was gracious and he brought them back. But that's how I believe that the behavior that he was presenting, where it came from.
So when you were about 35, you were able to leave your husband at that time?
Yes, the aggression had built up a whole lot. And So much so that there was a few times I came home from church and he had a whole handful of knives in each hand and just threw them at me as I walked through the door. And they just flew and hit the wall next to me. None of them hit me. And I just stood there like, wow, like, okay. And I turned around and I walked back out and I went to my mom one last time. And I told her what happened. And I was hoping that she would say, just come home. But she told me, no, you made your bed. You have to sleep in it. So I had nowhere to go. I went back. And so fast forward, I had 2 kids, and they were now my lifeline. And I just focused on them and protected them. He never hit them, never touched them at all. And I was just like, well, these kids are here now, so maybe he'll change towards me. And but it didn't. It didn't change towards me. I had to lock my children in their bedroom every night when he came home from work because I never knew how he would be. And so I was like, okay, I have to start a different process in this. So I decided that I was going to be bold and do a turn of events. So I decided to go to EMT school, despite his not wanting me to. But I met a lot of people there, and they were like, you're good at this. You need to find out who you are. It's okay to leave that house and come in here and learn. And I did. But the more I was there at the rescue squad, and I would come home from a call, the more I got hit because he realized I was no longer being submissive to him. So that went on all the way through my EMT years. But I didn't give up. I was gaining strength by finding out that I loved to care for people. I was starting to see who I was. And I was like, this is cool, because I finally felt free. I mean, I'd still have to come back to that house, but I was like, there's a light here. There's a light at the end of this tunnel. And I was like, one of my friends was like, you need to take self-defense so that you can prepare for getting out. They knew that I wasn't happy, that he did things, but even them, I didn't tell everything. I was afraid that they wouldn't like me, wouldn't believe me. I finally had a couple of friends, so I guarded my secrets very carefully, but they could see bruises on my arms and stuff, and they were like, where'd they come from? And I'm like, oh, in the ambulance, I bumped myself treating this patient or that patient. But they weren't stupid. They didn't believe that, so they watched over me. And so I did. I took their advice and I went to karate to learn self-defense. And that was a blast. I was like, learning how to punch and hit things. I was like, this feels good. Not to hurt people, but to let out that anger and that aggression, like the pain. I just transferred it all to those bags every time I hit one. But then all of a sudden he decides, I'm joining with you. At first I was concerned, and then I thought, it's like, it doesn't really matter, because my mindset for doing this was to eventually free myself. And in the same instances I was taking the karate for the self-defense, I started looking for a safe house to get out of there. And so the karate was for the self-defense. Him being there, I was like, at first. But then I got over that, and I was like, okay, you can do what you want to do. But then I became injured and I couldn't go anymore. I had got hit in the head, and I had a brain injury. So they were like, sorry, you're done karate, you can't come anymore. So I got hit in the head with a boat trailer, and it had slammed down on top of my head. And I should have been dead, but just had a brain bleed, and that went away. And I'm here today. But I wasn't allowed to participate anymore because of that injury. But he continued to go, and he excelled and became a black belt. And when I got hit now, it was more intense because now he knew how to do other things. And he began to use the karate things on me. And so I was like, all right. So I just became crafty and learned how to bob and weave. And I remembered what I learned in class and just started to apply that. And he missed a lot more often than he hit. And he was getting angrier because I was becoming more, in his words, aggressive. He's like, I want back my submissive wife. And I told him no, that she doesn't live here anymore. And that angered him. And it felt good to me. I felt liberated. I was just like, I need to do this. And it hurt me more because I got hit more, but it just built up my determination to get out. But then he started taking apart my car. Every time I went in it, parts were missing. And so I couldn't leave. So I was like, all right, well, how can I beat this? So I would he would fix it. I would tell him that the car won't start and pretend like I didn't know anything. And he would fix it. But while he was fixing it, I would watch. And it was back in the day when you could actually like take out a carburetor and a starter, and it's just bare minimal. So I learned how to fix it, put the stuff back in. So when he disabled my car, if he did it again, I would know how to go outside in the middle of the night, put it back together, and when I'm ready to leave, just hightail it out. But I didn't get to use that because soon after, he tried to kill me. He came in one night and was just in a rage, and don't know what happened at work, don't know what set him off. He was still using drugs. Every time I went to church, he would get angry. And so I'm assuming that it was those things. I don't know. But his aggression was so severe that he was strangling me and I was on the floor. And at this point, I wasn't going to live. And I remember praying and the hold was broke. And I got out, left that house. But the problem is I did not have a safe house yet. There was none that would take me and my kids. So I didn't know where to go. So I went to the rescue squad building where I worked and sat in there. But I was free. I was out. That was the last time I went back into that house, except to care for my children. I did get an attorney and work things out until I could get them out of the house. But that was the last day that I stepped foot back in that house.
You're in a relationship now?
After traumatic stuff that you live through like this, you do not go into a relationship because I didn't know how. I didn't know how to be vulnerable. I didn't trust. I knew what love felt like from him, but I didn't know how to open my heart to show him back. And the biggest thing is I didn't know how to communicate, to talk at all, because I was always shut up. I was always told I was wrong. Your opinion doesn't matter. So just be silent. And that's what I've always was silent my whole life. Had to be silent, can't tell people, can't do this, can't do that. So you just kind of, you can't do anything. And then when I got some independence back, I didn't know how to live in it properly, if that makes any sense. Like when I communicated, it would come out harsh because I didn't know how to project my opinion without being mean, because no one taught me how to communicate properly. So that was a major, major problem.
Where are you now? How do you feel about having connections with people, friends, relationships, affection?
I've come a long way. I still go to counseling every so often because I believe that you can never stop growing. And because I had no basis as to what was right or wrong, that counseling was a lifeline because they taught me the boundaries. It's okay to set boundaries, that boundaries aren't bad, that they're, letting people know where you're at and that this is right and that this is wrong, and to protect yourself. And it took years to have confidence enough to set them to not be afraid to tell people no, because I didn't know how to say no. I was always told, you have to do this because I tell you to. And I had to find myself, and it took me years, but I finally was able to grow and have some confidence in myself because I had no self-esteem, none at all. I felt like I could do nothing. I became an EMT, and that was a wonderful thing, saving people's lives. It was great. It was what I needed to boost me up, to get me out of that house, to get the courage to run. But it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough to, I had to keep on growing to build that self-confidence. And when I was 50, I went back to school because I never got to graduate. And I missed that. Never got to go to proms and do all the things that kids do. And so I went to chiropractic assistant school and took a year and a half for the program, but I graduated as valedictorian of my class and was able to walk down the aisle and wear the cap and gown and do that whole experience. So that totally lifted my confidence to finally defeat something and go back to school, even though everyone's like, you can't do that. You can't learn something new. And I'm like, screw that. Yes, you can. Sorry about that. But, it's like, yes, you can. You can do whatever you want to do. And that's the mentality that I finally, after all these years, have grown to enjoy and encompass. And grew into my photography and go on hikes and climb mountains and sit on the jetties during the storms and photograph the waves. And just the confidence is just non-stoppable now once you break free. So that's where I'm at this point.
Why did you decide to, share your story, and as heartbreaking as it is, to put it out there? What was the purpose in that?
The purpose in that is that I want women to realize that you don't need to stay defined by what was done to you. Abuse creates such an ugliness inside, and it affects your whole life if you don't take it and undo everything that was done to you so that you can actually see who you are. You don't have to stay there. Not with the person. You don't have to stay with the symptoms and the effects of the abuse. You can grow past it. That it took me all these years to realize that and grow past it. My hope is that someone will hear this and be younger than me and get more of their life than I had. Because I feel like after 35, I'll be 65. It's like, so I've lost 35 years of my life, and it formed my future until I was about 50 when I started really breaking chains. So for the past 15 years, that's the only time of my whole life that I've been moving forward. And I hope that women will not sit in it like I did and get up and realize that they can be something as well. They don't have to stay here.
Were there things from previous relationships that you look back and notice signs, like warning signs that maybe you should not have pursued with that person?
Yes. After I got out of that marriage, I had a couple of relationships, and I did get remarried, and that didn't work only because I didn't know how to love and live within a marriage relationship. But there are red flags. If they talk down to you, or they don't want to compliment you, if you become the brunt of their jokes in public around your friends, those are all red flags as to how they're going to respect you as a person. It doesn't mean that they're going to hit you or abuse you, but mental abuse is just as bad sometimes as the physical parts. So just be on the lookout, because the only people that really matter are the ones that lift you up. If they can't lift you up, then you need to walk away from that. There's other things that I found that were reliable. And getting counseling was the biggest thing, because I didn't know right from wrong. I didn't have someone to teach me that. My mom didn't set guidelines for healthy relationships at all. She didn't live them. I had no one to look at to establish that until I went to counseling. That's a huge thing to do, because if someone is in a situation that I was and they didn't have those boundaries taught to them either, they may not know how to break the cycle, how to see what's right and wrong. They may not have any idea. And the counseling is what really helped me.
You would say that counseling has helped you the most in your healing journey?
It has. That and my friends at church and stuff, because they would, having a good core group of people that care about you, that trust you, that listen to you is highly important. You need a support group, whether you go to an abuse support group or if you go to a church and have support there. But you need a good support group to lift you up as well, besides the counseling.
And tell me about your friends now. You have a good group of friends?
Yes, I did get remarried. I finally learned the right way to do it, and things have been wonderful. I'm still growing and learning about, I still go to counseling to make sure that I, keep, it's still, even though I'm married, we still have boundaries. I still have, hey, I don't like that, or, can we do it this way instead of that way? But I learned how to finally communicate them boundaries. So it's wonderful. And our friend group is phenomenal. They love us. They lift us up. They never tear us down. And they definitely don't worship the devil. So that was a good thing. So that has made the world of difference, is having loyal friends.
So you're working on a book?
Yes.
Tell me about that.
That's been a journey. I've been writing it for 15 years because I don't want to write it. But everyone is like, you need to help other people. You need to help other people. So I want to make sure that the process is proper, and figuring out what stories to tell, what not to tell. But at the end, I'm almost finished now, and this part I'm working on the how to redeem themselves. That's where I'm at now. So once that's finished, it should be put in publication.
You sound very busy. You do a lot of, you're writing the book, go to church, counseling. What about hobbies? What do you love to do for fun?
I love photography, and I still dance. My husband teaches line dancing, so it's been cool to find that joy and not go into a bar to do it wrong. I guess I don't know if that's the right thing to say, is wrong, but to go into a bar atmosphere and just do it for an escape. Now I go and we teach people to have fun, and it's just a totally different turnaround than the lifestyle that I had in dancing before. And it's brought us great joy to teach them, because these little kids we teach, like last night, we were teaching these little 4 and 5 year olds how to dance. And it was hysterical. So that's a turnaround. And then the photography is just, I've always been the person to try to see beauty in things, even when it's ugly. And I could never understand why, but that has now blossomed in my photography, because now I'm able to take something that may not have something that's pretty in it and turn it into a work of art. And that's been a lot of fun.
What would you say is something that people might not know about you until they get to know you?
I had a skateboard shop, and I was a skateboarder, and I had a skateboard team.
Nice.
And that was a blast.
You did competitions?
Yes.
Nice.
Till I fell. A little tiny pebble hit I rolled over it, rolled down the hill, and my longboard's in the basement. So, but it's a lot of fun. That was a blast. Most people don't know that about me.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Of course.